Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you again, Mr. Cordray. When you were here previously, you stated, and you also told the chairman earlier today that you promised to be accountable and answerable to Congress and eager to work with Congress. But apparently, some of the people in your agency haven't got the memo yet. I've heard cases where this is from another office, not mine. It remains nameless, only so they have no need to fear any retribution. But our district is unable to close out certain cases that get referred to them because CFPB states it doesn't have to respond to them because it reports directly to the Fed. That was the second day of this month. I pursued that a little bit further when I saw it, and I found a litany of unreturned phone calls and messages that they have. And so maybe there are some people that just need to be briefed on your philosophy in the agency.
I'm not entirely following your question. Are you talking about a financial institution that feels that they couldn't get answers from our agency, or someone else?
Congressional offices.
Okay. Well, that's
members of Congress.
That's very different from what I've heard, although I'm happy to, and my staff will be happy to take up any particular situations that need to be attended to better. I've heard a lot of compliments from different congressional offices, both sides of the aisle, in terms of how we're handling consumer complaints. And we're beginning to see on our consumer complaint line lots of post-mortems from consumers who are very pleased with the fact that after months of problems, things got resolved.
Don't want to spend all the time on this, but
I'm sure it's a mixed bag, probably.
Yes. I'm sure it is. And there's something called the Victims Relief Fund, wherein your agency hangs on to the money instead of returning it to the Treasury. And they're supposed to be used to compensate victims of wrongful activity. There's no requirement that I can see that the penalty must be paid to the victims of a specific wrongdoing for which the penalty was collected. What happens to the money if the victim can't be located or there's more money collected than there is due compensation? Are you allowed to keep the money and commingle it with other agency funds?
So this is something that we've been looking at carefully. It is a provision of the Act, as you said. The first thing that happens in any matter of that sort is we're supposed to make a vigorous effort to find the victims who were wronged and make sure that they are recompensed as fully as possible. If there is a penalty that is assessed, that doesn't necessarily tie specifically to compensation, but if we can compensate victims, that's our first priority. If not, the law provides that that money can be used to facilitate and aid financial literacy and education efforts around the country for consumers. So that's a possible disposition of funds as well. Beyond that, I think we're trying to be mindful of just carrying out the law as Congress enacted it, and that's what it seems to say to us.
Would you anticipate being involved in stipulated settlements?
You mean settlements that don't go to a final court resolution?
Yes, sir.
I imagine that that will happen frequently, just as it does for every government agency and every private litigator as well.
But you don't anticipate that money would just be unbudgeted revenue to the agency, that money would be transparent and it would be going to victims or to education, as you indicated.
Oh, I see what you're saying. When we arrive at a settlement, I think it will typically be our practice to enter that settlement agreement in a court as a consent decree, which creates more enforceability and more transparency. And then the nature of that document is that the court will specify in the court order how any funds are to be allocated and how they're to be used, and that creates binding law that we have to follow. So that's what I would expect would typically be the case in our matters that don't go to some final judgment in a court.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Scott for 5 minutes.